The point of a maze is to find its centre. The point of the labyrinth is to find your centre. Seekers of the Grail have very often been drawn to France, to the 12th century, to the courts of love, where the tale of Sir Percival and his quest for the Holy Grail was first set down. It was a time of great flourishing, the height of Marian devotion, of great pilgrimages, of the rise of the Cathars, believed to have been the protectors of the precious Gnostic gospel of the beloved companion, said to have been brought across the sea by Mary Magdalene, who, the legend tells, lived out the rest of her life here and was highly venerated alongside the Mother of God, with many believing her to have been the bride of Jesus. Wherever she travelled, black Madonnas were created in her honour, often linking her to much earlier veneration of the goddess Isis. These were the days of the Knights Templar, who called the Magdalene Our Lady of Light. Eventually, however, and together with the Cathars, they were brutally attacked as heretics and feverishly put down, many thousands of souls being burnt alive during the Albigensian Crusade, a story we have told at length elsewhere. Yet somehow this great flowering, rebirth and cherishing of the feminine principle continued and found its expression despite all. The Grail Legends were central to these outpourings, as were the great Gothic cathedrals erected during these years, including the sublime architectural masterpiece of Chartres, dedicated to Our Lady. A palpable feminine energy has always been detected here, dating back many centuries to the ancient days of the Celtic Druids, who first felt it emanating from a deep grotto in the rock beneath the current structure, now a crypt, housing a highly revered statue of the Black Madonna enthroned beneath the altar. And it's this Black Madonna that's brought out, festooned with flowers, and carried through the streets nearby every August on the feast of the Assumption. When mythographer Joseph Campbell visited in the 1960s, he too felt this energy, and he named Chartres the womb of the world. And this is where we find the labyrinth, located on the floor in the centre of the nave as one enters the cathedral through the royal portal. In her book, The Path of the Holy Fool, Lauren Artress invites us to enter the labyrinth as the Grail Knights once entered into the forest, setting out from Camelot, one here, one there, each seeking the Holy Grail, each seeking to understand what ails the wounded king, and each praying for the healing of the wasteland and the revelation of the paths to the lost courts of joy. She suggests we might ponder 4 questions along our way. When has our soul's path opened up before us? What bad advice has impeded us? Where have we known kindness and understanding? And finally, to be asked when we arrive at the centre of the labyrinth, whom does the Grail serve? This, of course, was the question young Sir Percival failed to ask upon his first encounter with the mystery. For many hundreds of years, the labyrinth at Chartres was covered over with chairs until visitors in the 1990s, who, like Campbell, seemed to understand its profound mystical significance, requested their removal. Lauren Artress was one of these people. The labyrinth is now periodically uncovered and its use permitted. In the popular imagination, the labyrinth is associated with the Greek myth that tells the story of the tragic Minotaur trapped at its core. All who venture within risk becoming his prey. Only the hero Theseus escapes, and only with the aid of Adriani's thread. Other ancient cultures, predating the Greeks, tell a different tale. The labyrinth is a sacred centering field, akin to the Inuit medicine wheel, designed to be walked, akin to and giving form in a physical, geometric sense to the centering prayer of the contemplatives. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. There is only one path in and one path out, circling to the centre, yet also spiralling, drawing us deeper and deeper into the mystery. Some say that the six-petaled rose at its heart, symbol of the divine feminine, is an interdimensional portal, and certainly many, many souls have experienced it as such. The journey will be different for each of us, and each of us will have our own unique experience and tale to tell when we return. Of course, there may be perils to be encountered along the way, as there are on all such spiritual quests. Our own tragic minotaurs may be. The recognition of unloved and undernourished parts of ourselves that we would do well to approach, honour and befriend. Then they may help rather than hinder us, or they may stand aside, or maybe they will join us, parts of the whole embraced once more. Sometimes, though, as with any endeavour, it may feel like we are not getting anywhere at all, that we are stuck, disengaged maybe, and unable to find our way. The Spanish mystic Teresa of Avila employed a wonderful metaphor to elucidate such times. Some days, she explained, it seemed there was no water at all to be had for her garden. Other days, just the slightest trickle, to be carried from a distant parched stream. And then, out of the blue, it was as if the moisture rose up from beneath the ground itself. No need then for any struggling and carrying. Then the garden bloomed and flourished of its own accord, as it very well might in paradise. And at its fragrant heart, the beloved awaited her. Now this notion of discovering the beloved at the centre of the garden, put forward by Teresa, was clearly very much inspired by the Sufi mysticism that had flourished during the Arab occupation of southern Spain during the earlier medieval period. And although born much later, it's clear to see from her approach that she was deeply influenced by these Moorish values. And it was these same deeply romantic and evocative notions that had made their way up into France, carried in the songs and tales of the Spanish troubadours, and in the works of Islamic scholars from the great centres of learning like Cordoba. They had been the first to translate the Greek and Roman texts from the ancient world, Homer, Aristotle, Pythagoras, and later Plato, whose writings were to become the philosophical bedrock of the great Chartres Academy, created in 1006 and thriving throughout the 11th and 12th centuries. The cathedral that we see at Chartres today was erected between 1194 and 1220 on the site of 5 previous buildings dating back to the 4th century. And it is regarded as one of the most perfect cathedrals ever built, combining high Gothic architectural excellence with the profound wisdoms of sacred geometry gleaned from Islamic scholars migrating north, both from the Holy Lands and Moorish Spain, as we have said. The entire edifice of Chartres was designed to bring us into harmony with its sublime tonality, with its powerful indwelling frequency. It is an alembic, to use the alchemical term, a vessel purposefully created for our spiritual elevation, so that from the moment we enter in, we can find ourselves lifted beyond what Carl Jung called the spirit of the times, the everyday, and transported into the spirit of the depths, the great cosmic beyond, and its ancient embrace. Walking the labyrinth requires patience. It requires us to slow down, to focus our attention upon tracing the narrow pathways before us, and in so doing, we automatically concentrate our minds and for the duration shift our emphasis from our left to our right brain, from our predominantly logical to our predominantly intuitive mode of being. If we are using a finger meditation, one way to proceed is to use one's left hand to trace the way. This can create a very similar effect to the centering prayer, additionally using the body to assist us, which can help enormously. There are 3 R's, Lauren Artress explains, 3 frequent responses to the experience of the labyrinth: release, reclamation, and return. 3 aspects of the initiatory journey. There may be tears, laughter, or moments of pure stillness and peace, the kind of which T.S. Eliot writes of at the centre of the dance. The Iranian-born choreographer Banafsheh Saeed was inspired and later permitted to enact a dervish whirling within the labyrinth several years ago. And in her article Unfolding the Mysteries of Chartres, she writes, with approximately 276 stones, the labyrinth mirrors the days humans are in gestation. So, the winding pathway is a dying to our small self and a rebirth into our divine self. The form of a cross spans the labyrinth, and a flower, a rose with 6 petals, forms the centre, where the labyrinth ends, and we come then face to face with the altar and the Assumption of Mary into heaven. In one of the labyrinth meditations I came across whilst preparing this piece, the writers suggested participants might allow their third eye to open upon entering in. It reminded me straight away of Tolkien's character Starbrow in the short story Smith of Wootton Major, about a young lad who finds a tiny star trinket in a slice of birthday cake and discovers thereafter that he can pass to and fro between the world of fairy and the everyday, and that when in fairy and upon his return, the star which he wears on his brow glows brightly. In the Grail Legends too, this notion of the third eye opening might very well correspond to the archetype of the perfect fool, as we see it manifest in the young Sir Percival, whose innocence and purity, albeit naive, nevertheless allow him to progress through all manner of ills and to somehow become the first knight to discover the Grail Castle. And it is salutary to note, as we ponder such things, that the Grail Castle only becomes visible if we are in the realm of the liminal, the realm of consciousness, on the threshold of a dream, if you like, of the imaginal realms, spoken of so powerfully by Jung, Tolkien, and the French philosopher Henri Corbin in his own beautiful writings on the inner poetic realms of the mundus imaginalis. The castle, you see, is simply not visible to the everyday self. Those who know the tale well will remember that when Sir Percival fails to ask his question the first time around, everything just disappears, and the beautiful Grail maiden, who had carried the Holy Grail the night before, appears to him, though she is much changed, as if all the weight of time has come suddenly upon her, and she rebukes him, saying that the wasteland, the wounded king, and her own lost beauty can never, never be restored until such a question is finally asked. Well, for many years thereafter, Sir Percival wanders the forest, seeking endlessly to retrace his steps. Yet though he comes upon numerous other castles, he never again comes to the castle of the Grail. The progressed holy fool, the legend tells us, must find a way to preserve his wide-eyed, childlike innocence and combine it with wisdom born of experience of this long, long journey of maturation. Only then, after many trials and tribulations, is he enabled to proceed and to come again upon the wonder of the Grail and to finally ask his question. Whereupon the wounded king is instantly healed. The lost beauty of the Grail Maiden is restored to the full, and the wastelands burst forth into the most glorious flowering of spring. This, of course, is the ultimate promise, the emblem of total healing and transformation. We all progress in different ways and in our own time. Jungian analyst Robert Johnson writes in his famous book, He, of his own Grail-like experiences, of seeing a mystery revealed to him in all its splendour as a teenage boy, precipitating then a lifetime search for that same mystical moment, yet never, ever again finding it until he was almost 60 years old. Each journey, as we've repeatedly said, is unique. Yet what we can be sure of is that there is a deeply rooted archetypal pattern to such things, involving a coalescence of factors that, when present, bring us closer to these mysteries, to the possibility of healing. And one of these factors, these ingredients, if you like, is the childlike innocence of the Holy Fool. For me, it's not surprising that seekers of the Grail often gravitate to France, to the old Cathar and Templar regions of Provence, and to Chartres and its Labyrinth. For somehow these things return us to what was felt to be so threatening, to the crusaders who burnt and tortured those souls enamoured of the Gnostic wisdoms brought into their country long ago, teachings, wisdoms that pointed to and reignited a notion of a divine spark within us all, returning us to our own deep connection and fusion with the great cosmic whole. And when it was no longer possible to speak openly of such things, all went underground. And these teachings, these secrets, were hidden away until such times as the world became safe again. But not before they were encoded into the very fabric of Chartres and transposed into the glorious legends of the Holy Grail and sent out across Europe on the lips of the French troubadours. Those with eyes to see and ears to hear heard and saw and heeded. To others, such treasures were simply inconsequential, rather like the labyrinth, covered over for hundreds of years, waiting, just waiting to be rediscovered.